Good evening. My name is Teresa Cinnamond. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Mountain Lakes, I would like to welcome all of you to the 2020 Mountain Lakes Board of Education debate. Due to public health concerns, this debate is being conducted via Zoom, live streamed on YouTube, and will be available on YouTube in coming days. Please encourage your friends and neighbors to watch. The link will be made available on our website at www.lwvmtnlakes.com. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to empower voters and defend democracy. The work of League members throughout the New Jersey area and the United States helps make democracy work. The League has a long history of hosting nonpartisan candidate debates and educating the American people. Every election season, leagues across New Jersey and the country hold hundreds of debates and forums to help voters learn about candidates on their ballot. Watching a candidate debate is one of the best ways to prepare for casting your ballot. Carrying out our mission of encouraging informed and active participation in government, our league has received excellent marks over 50 years from Lakers who have found our debates helpful in discerning between candidates. We have also received thanks from candidates across the political spectrum for our past debates and forums, including recent ones. The League encourages active participation in government and respects its members' rights to their individual voices. However, we always act as a nonpartisan political organization. Like similar organizations throughout the United States, the League never endorses or opposes any candidate for public office. This evening, we will hold a debate for the 4 candidates for Board of Education who have agreed to participate. On behalf of the League and as a 19-year Mountain Lakes resident and parent, I would like to thank each of our participants. They are Kevin Driscoll, Patricia Lewis, Jennifer Parker, and Aruni Don. Of the 4 candidates participating tonight, Aruni Don is a current Board of Education member. There are 3 candidates on the ballot who declined to participate: Patty McElduff, Robert Wagmiller, and Mark Odenwelder. Of these 3 candidates, Patty McElduff and Robert Wagmiller are current Board of Ed members. Tonight you will hear a debate based solely on questions that came directly to me from residents of our school district. I have not shared questions with any candidate or League member other than our moderator. I share the League's view that debates and forums are the lifeblood of democracy. League debates allow all voters, irrespective of political party or who they may support in a given election, to voice questions important to the community, to listen to each candidate respond to the same questions side by side and without specific preparation. Before we get started, in furtherance of the League's goal of defending free, fair, and accessible elections, here is an update on voting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, all registered voters in New Jersey should receive a ballot by mail for the November general election. All voters are strongly encouraged to vote that ballot as soon as possible and return it so it reaches election officials by the deadline. Please follow the directions for filling out the ballot carefully. There are 4 ways to cast your ballot. You may mail it via the United States Postal Service, drop it in one of the secure drop boxes throughout New Jersey, including at the Denville Municipal Building, located at 1 St. Mary's Place, and the Montville Municipal Building, located at 195 Change Bridge Road. Or you may bring your ballot directly to the office of the county clerk in Morristown. Or if you prefer to vote in person on Election Day, you may do so at Mountain Lakes High School. Ballots cast in person will be provisional ballots that will be counted once the Election Commission determines that you have not voted by mail. Please go to the League of Women Voters National Voter Services tool, vote411.org, for more information on voting. League members are available live to answer any questions. On Vote 411, you can also view many of the debates and forums that the League has conducted across New Jersey. These include the Chatham Board of Education debate, the Madison Board of Education debate, as well as the 7th Congressional District debate between Republican Tom Kean and Democrat Tom Malinowski. Also, 30th is available for all to watch. The League encourages all voters to ask questions, get answers, check the facts, and please vote. One last item. On behalf of the League, please note that by participating or viewing this event, you agree not to record, reproduce, transmit, or stream from the virtual or recorded event. This includes no taking pictures or taking photographs or other recordings. Any media generated during this event shall be the sole property of the League. I would now like to welcome and thank our moderator, where she has served as president for the past 5 years and a board member for the past 13 years. Susan has moderated many League debates, including among candidates for boards of education and various local borough and town councils. Timothy is a longtime board member of the Plainfield League, where he has focused on membership and voter services. Timothy is an experienced debate moderator and facilitator, and is also a director of the New Jersey State League. Thank you, Susan and Timothy, for working with us on this debate. With that, I would like to again thank the candidates and turn the program over to our moderator, Susan Ferris-Wrights. Thank you, Susan.
Hopefully you can now hear me. Yes? Okay, that's good. Okay. My name is Susan Ferris-Wrights. I'm going to be your moderator this evening. We have 4 candidates. They are Patricia Lewis, Kevin Driscoll, Aruni Don, and Jennifer Parker. What we're going to do is we're going to start out by having each candidate take 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And after we're finished with that, I'm going to ask the candidates to answer a series of questions. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer each question for up to 90 seconds. That said, once we complete the questions, we will have a closing opportunity for each candidate, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide a closing statement to the audience as well. Hopefully, I have enough questions, which I think I do. They're quite varied in terms of what they're looking for. So I'm going to get started. When I ask the questions, I'm going to ask the questions on a rotating basis so that we will be changing the person that answers first every single time. For our purposes, we're going to start out by having the introductions, by having the candidates introduce themselves, again, for that 2-minute block. And then we'll get started with the actual questions that people have submitted that they'd like to hear answers to. So that would mean that Aruni Don would go first in terms of introducing herself. So go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Aruni Don, and I currently serve on the Board of Education. I was appointed in January to serve a 1-year term. You may wonder why I chose to step into this role. Besides a commitment to my family, if anyone asks me what my passions are, I would say it's healthcare and education. As a professional working full-time for a global pharmaceutical company, my role is to help shape the future of healthcare. I truly love what I do because I'm able to contribute to society by bringing forth innovative and transformative medicines to market to address patient needs. My interest in education started decades ago, growing up in a household where our family dinner table conversations often focused on many aspects of the US education system. And that's because my father at the time was a university professor, so I have a lot of respect for educators. As for my background, I completed a doctorate in pharmacology and subsequently moved to the East Coast to be with my husband, which led me to Rutgers University, where I finished my postdoctoral training. That's how we ended up in New Jersey, and in 2015 found this great community to call home and raise our children. Now that I'm a mom of 3 young boys, it is even more important for me to continue to give back and help shape the future of education, starting with our local community. Therefore, I have a vested interest in making sure that our schools stand out on the map as one of the best places to learn and grow. I have been actively engaged with the schools ever since we moved here 5 years ago. It is my deep desire to inspire young Lakers, our future generation of leaders. I think that my foresight and ability to look at things strategically, analyze information with a keen eye for detail, ask thoughtful questions to identify gaps and find solutions represent key strengths that I bring to the table. I hope to continue to build on that in the future and serve for another three-year term. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next candidate to provide us with an introduction is Kevin Driscoll. So Kev, we're not hearing you, dear.
About that.
There, now we got you.
Great. Well, let me start by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's Board of Education candidate forum. I moved to Mountain Lakes a little over 4 years ago with my wife, Rima, and my youngest daughter, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a junior in high school and actually right now is playing field hockey. One of the primary considerations we had in choosing Mountain Lakes was the great reputation of the schools. So a little about me. As far as my education, I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Western Illinois University. And then I went on to get a master's degree and a PhD from New York University in environmental health sciences. From a career standpoint, I had a 30-year career at Procter & Gamble Company. For most of my career, I was running large, complex healthcare organizations. During my tenure, my organizations delivered over 300 products to the global market. After retiring from P&G, I started a healthcare consulting business called Healthcare Innovation Partners. I also serve on multiple boards of directors, as well as advisory committees for organizations such as the EPA, FDA, NASA, and the World Health Organization. I currently sit on 2 board companies. As for the Mountain Lakes community, upon joining the community, I serve on the Environmental Commission, the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and I'm on the advisory board for the Biotech Academy. So why am I running for the Board of Education? First, I believe that one of the most important responsibilities of a community is to provide a quality education for its children. That said, I believe my 30+ years of business and financial management experience can help ensure the community has top-notch, financially sound schools that meet the needs of every student in the district. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, our next candidate is Patricia Lewis. So, yep, there you go. We should be able to hear you. Yep.
The function wasn't working the first time I clicked. At first, I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters and also the candidates for giving the community an opportunity to have a safe forum to get to know us better, given there is a pandemic. A little bit about myself. I just thought that it was about 7 years to this date that I was driving through Mountain Lakes community looking for a home. It was a beautiful fall day, and my husband and I knew we found the right community when on a Monday afternoon, the boulevard was packed with people walking. The fall foliage was at its peak and the lakes were just beautiful. We knew we found a very special place. We moved here and currently my children, Connor is in 10th grade and my daughter Shayna is in 8th grade. A little bit about my background. I received my BA from Colgate University in economics. Right after that, I went to work in commercial banking where I managed a staff, analyzed commercial accounts, but I also used my analytical skills and creativity to find uses for software the bank was not aware of. I created 2 programs, one a cost saving that over the years probably saved M&T Bank millions of dollars in expense staff, and also a creative program to increase revenue. After realizing commercial banking was not for me, I went and received my MBA from the University of Michigan, where I then went into brand management. And as a brand manager, you're responsible for driving growth, the P&L, and also watching the expenses to make sure you provide the most profit to the company. I then took some time off to be with my family, and I am now have the best job I feel in the country. I'm a math teacher at Chester Public Schools, and every day I got to use my creativity to find a way to get students to understand math better. I'm running for the Board of Ed because I'm passionate about education and providing the optimal learning experience for every student. I want to use my experience as a teacher and a former business executive with an MBA, along with expertise of Mountain Lake School staff and community, to responsibly allocate resources.
Thank you. Okay. And our last candidate to hear from for intro is Jennifer Parker.
There we go. Okay. Great. Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. So my husband Stuart and I moved to Mountain Lakes in 2016 with our daughters, Warren, Harrison, and Ashton. They are in 10th grade, 8th grade, and 6th grade, respectively. So a little bit about me. I have been a corporate lawyer for the past 20 years. I have specialized in investment funds and asset management. I received my law degree from Widener in Delaware and a master's of law from Georgetown. Shortly after my husband and I got married, he got a job in London and we moved to London, England. I went to work at that time for a law firm, Fried, Frank, Harris, Shriver, and Jacobson. And while there, I focused on Goldman Sachs's private funds that were located outside of the United States. Eventually, after 12 years, I left the law firm, the rigorous law firm world, and I went to work in-house at a financial services company. During my time at the financial services company, I sat on the board of various investment funds. I remained on those boards for several years until we negotiated a sale of the funds. I currently work for Levi and Korzinski, and I'm focusing on securities litigation, something a little different right now. So I'm running for the Board of Education with Kevin and Patricia because I've always been involved with my kids' schools, whether it be as a room mom or as a committee chair. So I fully recognize that running for the board is a little bit different level than sort of your room mom. But in this past year especially, I've just witnessed a frustrated process and at times a lack of professionalism within the board. And I honestly believe that my prior board experience, as well as my legal experience, will enable me to work with the current board members to implement a process that will lead to informed decision-making as well as collaborative decision-making that would be in the best interest for the Mountain Lake school children.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so now we start with the question part of it. And as I indicated to you previously, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the question. So the first question is going to start with Kevin Driscoll, and this is the question. Do you think that there is a need to bring more organization and efficiency to Board of Ed meetings and Board of Ed decision-making in order to make the Board of Ed more effective? For example, would you support returning to a board of committees versus a board as a whole by creating permanent committees, including finance, curriculum, facilities, athletics, and creating a standing construction committee? I'm happy to repeat the question if anyone needs it when it comes to your turn, and I can repeat it now for you, Kevin, because that's a really long question. So Kevin?
Yes, thank you very much for the question.
Okay.
No need to repeat it because I think it actually fits very well with the Move Forward platform that Patricia and Jen and I have put forward. First, let me say, I agree with the questioner. I think the Board of Education meetings are not functional. I think that information is not shared in detail. I think there isn't feedback and responsiveness to the community. And one of the elements of our platform is to create standing committees. When you look at our finance platform, one of the first things that we have proposed to do is to create a standing finance committee. But what's important is you've got to have the right expertise on that committee. Business and finance expertise, which is what I bring, which is what Patricia brings, which is what Jen brings. Also, we propose generally that the board will function more effectively with standing committees in the area of curriculum, in the area of building and services, in the area of communication. So the answer is we strongly support the formation from the board going to a board of committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Patricia Lewis, can you answer that question also? And again, I'm happy to repeat it.
Sorry, there's a delay in my unmuting. Yes, can you repeat it just for myself and for the community since it's such a long question?
Yep. Do you think that there is a need to bring more organization and efficiency to Board of Ed meetings and Board of Ed decision-making in order to make the Board of Ed more effective? For example, would you support returning to a board of committees versus a board as a whole by creating permanent committees, including finance, curriculum, facilities, athletics, and creating a standing construction committee? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the question. As Kevin Driscoll so eloquently put, it is a part of our platform, and we do want to have a standing finance committee. You cannot, in March, surprise the community with a $1.1 to $1.5 million budget shortfall and then have meetings run efficiently. With a standing finance committee, you would have been able to recognize that problem much earlier. You would have had the time to bring the expertise of whether you needed community members or the BA to research and understand why there's a shortfall, what can we do about it? So I full-heartedly agree. And as far as the other committees, Mr. Featherman just last night in the Board of Ed meeting said that from his experience, those were the committees that work very well. In the fall, we had committees such as AP, math, block scheduling. Those are not conducive for the Board of Ed. We have to keep our priorities straight and realize that we are an oversight role to see the district is run well and not to manage the day-to-day operations. That is the job of the superintendent and our excellent staff at the Mountain Lake School District. So as Kevin stated, and Jennifer and I have talked about, we wholeheartedly agree to have standing committees and to enhance the professionalism and the efficiency of the Board of Ed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jennifer Parker, can you answer that question? Again, happy to repeat it. It's pretty lengthy.
I won't make you repeat it. It's fine. I think I've got this. So thank you. I won't repeat what Kevin and Tricia have just so eloquently laid out, but I will just simply add to it that we do, I do agree, and we do think that standing committees for crucial areas is very important. But more than that, we also think that there needs to be set goals for these committees and plans, and then require on-time deliverables so that the information is provided to the board in a timely manner, to the whole board, not just sitting with the information with the committees. So it is very imperative that the committees communicate with the board in a timely manner so that they can make informed decisions that are in the best interest of the school district. So I think I will simply leave it at that, that we do think that we need them. There definitely needs to be a more organization on the board. And I will ditto what Kevin and Tricia said. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Aruni Don, can you answer that question also, please?
Sure. I would like to say that I, in fact, support board of committees, and we did discuss this at the last meeting, and I expressed my support for having committees. And the reason being is that when committees are run well and it's organized by a chair that knows how to communicate the information effectively with the rest of the board, it is effective to have committees. And I think that's what I see is that the needed. And I do as I said, support having, standing committees. One thing that I would add is that these have been, we are continue to discuss this. And I think it has to be a discussion with the administration as well. Not everything needs a standing committee. Some may topics or some issues may just need ad hoc committees. So it's not all or none. But I do think that board of committees makes sense for us going forward.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, next question. Next question is going to start with Patricia Lewis. And the question is this: are there actions, policies, or programs that you believe should be considered to increase revenue and reduce expenses? Are there actions, policies, or programs that you believe should be considered to increase revenue and reduce expenses? So Patricia, if you could answer that first.
Thank you for that question. Looking at the current budget situation that we went through in the spring, we have a situation and it hasn't been resolved. We have asked, Mr. Driscoll asked it at a meeting, first of all, for there to be a review of what happened and what did we learn from that process. So we need to understand where we were at to understand where we are going. As far as specific programs, I think it's really important since I'm in education, to have an understanding of what is the best programs for our students as a whole, not looking at the individual group. You have to consider all the stakeholders. So although your children may not be a part of those programs, you have to look at what is most important for the community. And there has to be ways to look at what expenses can be cut, because we all know that the Lake Drive revenue is not where it's at. Boonton Township enrollment is going down. So I do agree we need to look at revenue sources and be creative in finding more. And having the taxpayers again have a huge hit is not the answer. We have to find creative ways besides increasing the taxes. The community has spoken. They don't want any more taxes. So we do have to find creative revenue. And the way to do that is to talk to stakeholders and work with the Board of Education as a whole to find the best alternatives.
Thank you. Okay. Jennifer Parker?
Unmute. Okay, there we go. Actually, can you just repeat the question one more time to make sure?
Yeah. Are there actions, policies, or programs that you believe should be considered to increase revenue and reduce expenses?
Okay, so I believe this was interestingly discussed on the board meeting the other night, which was somebody asked that specific question. Maybe they emailed it then subsequently, but and the thought was that we have expertise in this community that can take a look at that. And this is something where you can bring in the community. Do I know specific programs that I would enhance? I mean, we have the Lake Drive School and it's a phenomenal school. Mountain Lakes High School and Boonton Township, but that just is based on Boonton Township. But there is marketing to be had. There is information that needs to get out there. So the question is, do we utilize that? I agree with Tricia, whether we need to work with the current administration and look at what we have on offer and the best ways to get that information out there. Regarding expenses, I think that is an ongoing discussion, and that falls into the budget and the finances and the need for a committee, because we should always be looking at. That's not just a one-off thing. That is all the time across the board. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Aruni Don. Actions, policies, or programs that you believe should be considered to increase revenue and reduce expenses.
Sure. So I just wanted to call out that we know that 68% of our property taxes goes to fund schools. And if we look at how we spend that money, about 70% of the school budget is spent on instruction employees, teachers' salaries, and benefits. I think we need to pay our teachers well, and the total compensation package is an incentive to retain and recruit high quality talent. And so no one wants our taxes to increase, but considering the rising cost of living, inflation rates, and the impact of COVID, we do need to figure out how to maximize the dollars we have and still be able to pay our teachers and pay their benefits. There's definitely room to trim down expenses, and having, I think, an experienced superintendent and BA along with proper strategic planning well in advance would alleviate some of the challenges that we did encounter this last year. I think one way to reduce the expenses is to look at the healthcare benefits. Because of the rising cost of healthcare, there's actually legislation that was introduced earlier this year that would lower the cost of healthcare plans to New Jersey teachers, and we could save taxpayers money and the school district further money. And as far as revenue generation, there's been a number of ideas that have been proposed, and we need to continue to discuss that with the administration this year.
Great, thank you. Okay, Kevin Driscoll.
Thank you very much. I don't need the question repeated. Let me just say first, it's an excellent question. Even if you just look where we stand right now, we know this year we've got fewer Lake Drive students. We have a decrease in out-of-district tuition-paying students, and we're going to have fewer students coming from Boonton Township. So we know we've got revenue challenges, and there may be more. Now, also, there's been a number of ideas thrown out on the board. Unfortunately, those have not been followed up on. What we have proposed in our financial platform is that what the board needs to do is establish a long-range planning committee. Any good organization, business, whatever, would have a long-range planning committee. That committee needs to assess anticipated future revenues and expenses to the school district, and also including several revenue declines, the ones I've just talked about. That committee needs to draft a strategy and action plan looking forward, not 6 months, not 1 year, 3 to 5 years, on how we're going to control expenses and how we might meaningfully be able to increase revenues. So again, in our mind, and what Patricia and Jen and I have proposed and needs to happen, is establish a Board of Education long-range planning committee with the right type of expertise on it to come up with a revenue-generating, expense-saving plan. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, next question. This is going to start with Jennifer Parker, and that is this. How would you recommend the Board of Ed build a relationship with the new superintendent to assist him in performing well and holding the district's teachers and staff accountable for performing effectively? Let me reread that. Okay. How would you recommend the Board of Ed build a relationship with the new superintendent to assist him in performing well and holding the district's teachers and staff accountable for performing effectively? So that starts with Jennifer Parker.
Okay, great. You know, that's an interesting question, and it is actually one that I have thought about if I got onto the board, what I would do. And first of all, with that, I mean, obviously you're meeting with the superintendent, and it is so important to us, and us, I mean, Kevin, Patricia, myself, and we've talked about this. We have a new superintendent. We have a new assistant superintendent. We have a new principal at the high school. We're going to have a new assistant principal at a high school. I mean, this is a lot of new people going on here in this district. It is imperative that we work with them. We can't, the district can't really afford much more change. I think it was detrimental to our students. So I think you go in there, I think you meet with him, I think you ask the superintendent. You have to open up a line of communication, which I'm sure there is now, but a line of communication with the superintendent, and you have to work with him and support him to make him the best that he can be, as well as the teachers and the staff. It's imperative. It absolutely is imperative.
Great, thank you. Okay, Aruni?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, absolutely. How would you recommend the Board of Ed build a relationship with the new superintendent to assist him in performing well and holding the district's teachers and staff accountable for performing effectively?
Thank you. So I am very confident that we have a strong relationship with the new superintendent, and it's been very collaborative thus far. And I am confident in his ability to ensure that the district staff and the teachers are performing well. We have a strong leadership team in the administration, with the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and now with coming the high school principal and assistant principal, et cetera. The team is a solid team, and I am confident in their ability to carry that through. And I would also like to add that we, in fact, discussed the long-range planning a couple of weeks ago, and I have informed the superintendent that I'm interested in being part of that committee, as that's exactly what I do in the pharmaceutical world. In order to bring therapies to market, my strategic insights, looking at 3 to 5 years before a product launches in the market, that's exactly what I do. And I think that was already discussed, and we have meetings planned in the upcoming weeks to carry that through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kevin Driscoll.
Thank you very much. I don't need the question repeated. Let me say that, first of all, a school district in many respects is like a complex company, like a business. The superintendent is the CEO, and that CEO has a board. I have had boards of directors. I currently serve on companies on the boards of directors, so I have a feel for what that relationship is like. The superintendent, in the end, is hired by the board, and the board needs to set clear expectations for the superintendent and then empower them and give them the resources to get the job done. There needs to be trust of the board to the super, and the super needs to keep the board informed. I think what I'm concerned about is when I look at the last relationship between the board and the former superintendent, that certainly isn't the kind of relationship that I would have ever thought that was appropriate. If we get the right kind of people on the board with business experience, they understand what that relationship should be, clear expectations, empowerment, give the person the resources, let them get the job done. And if things go astray, then feedback and discussions happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Patricia Lewis.
Yes, I would like to expand on what Kevin Driscoll was just talking about and Jennifer alluded to as well. In order to have an effective relationship and communication with the superintendent, I think the first thing that needs to be established, and I know Mr. Featherman is probably going to release them at the next Board of Ed meeting because he talked about that, is having superintendent goals and Board of Ed education goals. In order to effectively lead, you need to set your strategy and communicate that clearly. Last year for the 2019-20, the board goals were established on January 13th, 2020. You don't establish board goals and direction of a vision halfway through the school year. So it's very important. Now, working in a school district, and everyone knows we're going through a pandemic and there's a lot of administration change. So I can understand why Mr. Featherman has not established these yet, because the priority was to get the kids back to school. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing what his goals are. As Board of members, Kevin, Jennifer, and I are dedicated to making sure we have a long-range plan. We communicate effectively, not only with the superintendent, but build that trust again with the community. So there's a clear vision that's communicated to the superintendent and to the entire community. And that way, if everyone knows where the ship is heading, everyone knows what their job and role is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. And this question will start with Aruni Don. So, okay. If elected for one of the upcoming terms, what additional support, if any, would you advise the administration give to teachers and staff? If elected for one of the upcoming terms, what additional support, if any, would you advise administration give to teachers and staff? So that question starts with Aruni Don.
Sure. I think here what I would recommend is more of a culture shift, really to create an inclusive environment, work environment that can result in greater productivity and more efficient processes, that there's better communication between the administration and the teaching staff. So it's not a top-down approach, it's more of bottom-up, let's listen to the teachers who are actually there and day in, day out with our students. Let's be inclusive and hearing their voices, hearing the community voices, and all of that, take that student voices, take all perspectives and include that. And so I think it's a more of a whole holistic cultural shift. And I know that, I've heard that this existed, and it still does in pockets. And I think we need to kind of really bring that forward and pay a lot of attention. And that will really excite the whole, the instructional staff to kind of support and educate our students.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kevin Driscoll.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yep, if elected for one of the upcoming terms, what additional support, if any, would you advise the administration give to teachers and staff?
So thank you very much. So the first thing I have to say is really thank you to all our teachers. I mean, this is a tremendously difficult time on all of us. They are in the front lines and it's very challenging. So, the first thing I would say is, like any good relationship between an employer and an employee, and that's what the administration-teacher relationship is. The teachers should be empowered, they should be supported, and they should be valued. We should enable them to get the kind of training and additional education that makes them top quality teachers. I mean, one of the areas that's really important is understanding how equity relates to education, how we can support them and train them in that way. But one of the things I think that we should never do again is do what we did this spring when the Board of Education and the superintendent started talking about tax cuts and budget shortfalls. And next thing we know, we see slides talking about positions being cut. And though they didn't have names by them, okay, that is not the way to treat your staff, okay? Because all those teachers had an idea, their names were on the list. And so that's something we should never do. That's not valuing them. That's not empowering them. I wouldn't do that. Patricia wouldn't do that. Jennifer wouldn't do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patricia Lewis, can you answer that question?
Could you repeat it, please?
Yep, if elected for one of the upcoming terms, what additional support, if any, would you advise the administration give to teachers and staff?
Well, as everyone knows, these are unprecedented times with the pandemic. So given the technology needs of the teachers every day, and especially those teaching in the hybrid model, I would want to ensure that they have the resources available and pull the teachers. They know on a day-to-day basis what their needs are. We have the most outstanding staff that is so talented, and every day they give it their all. And I would like to understand what services do they need to perform better. And there's also, I'd like an opportunity for teachers. Collaboration is key. If they're empowered and they feel that they can bring their good ideas and share those with each other, it doesn't cost any money, and it allows the teachers to really highlight all of their expertise to other teachers. So I think the main thing is communication. Again, what do the teachers want? Not is what I think a teacher wants. What do they want? And what is the best way to provide that for them?
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jennifer Parker.
Thank you. I don't need you to repeat the question.
Okay.
I think I have to obviously reiterate, Patricia has such personal insight into this particular topic. So I think when it comes to talking about teachers, I would just simply add, and I think this is sort of basically what Kevin was saying, was that the morale was so low last year due to what went on. And I would almost call them antics. It was just so unfortunate what happened. And then this is where my legal side would come in, because I know they teetered on the line of some legal indiscretions that occurred with timing and what have you. We played with people's livelihoods last year, and it was just, that's really tough to come back from. So I guess I would mostly advise, I think communication is key, but there's a morale issue, I suspect, going on, but we're not sitting in the middle of the school. So I would go with Tricia's point of really talk to the teachers and ask them what it is that they need. And we need to truly empower and support them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. On that, we're going to move to a different topic. Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic has a multifaceted impact on our educational system. What do you see as the board's role in determining and protecting student safety? And how does that impact school instruction and programs, both during and after school hours? The board's role. Okay, so let's start with Kevin Driscoll.
So thank you very much. Yes, it is unprecedented times. I think it's paramount that the board and all the administrative staff, the most important thing is the safety of our students, the safety of our teachers, of the staff, everybody that's in the school. That has to be paramount. You know, when we talk about our education, safety comes first, and then we want a quality education. Okay, the decision's been made that we're going to head back to school. I support that. I believe that the administration has looked at all the relevant data and has made a decision that we can go back and the students can go back safely and the teachers and staff can be treated safely. What is really important and what the board has to set the expectation with the administration, that we are going to look at the best science. We're going to look at what the CDC says. We're going to look at what the New Jersey state says, and we are going to make sure, okay, that we abide by all those things and we don't put any students, teachers, or staff at any type of unreasonable risk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patricia Lewis.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
In regards to the pandemic, I am in an elementary school every day, and you know, the safety of the children and the staff has to come first. We want to make sure that no child is put at high risk, no teacher is put at high risk, no staff member, including custodial staff. So as Kevin was talking about, we need to ensure CDC sets the guidelines. We need to make sure those guidelines are being followed. And the role of the board, as outlined by the New Jersey School Boards Association, is we are the communication link between the community and the school system. So in order to have a safe environment, we need to make sure that all the rules and regulations are communicated clearly to every member in the community that is sending a child or has a family member working in the school system. If you don't know what the rules are clearly, then you're not going to follow them. So we have to have clear guidelines, clear communication to ensure the safety of everyone. And of course, it's followed by science, and we will follow the CDC guidelines, but that is established by the CDC, all medical decisions. We just want to ensure our policies follow those guidelines. Thank you.
Great. Jennifer Parker.
All right, could you repeat the question? It's the end of it that I was a little sketchy on.
Okay. The COVID-19 pandemic has a multifaceted impact on our educational system. What do you see as the board's role in determining and protecting student safety? And how does that impact school instruction and programs, both during and after school hours?
Okay, so I think, honestly, the board's role will be to collaborate with the administration. It is imperative that that the board would be probably a day-to-day discussion with the administration, taking the administration's recommendations, helping to implement those recommendations, whether it be from the financial standpoint, logistics, because we've obviously needed to hire people, get people in, do whatever we needed to do to get the kids back to school. Safety is imperative. And And as Tricia pointed out, communication, the link with the community, and making sure that everyone is well informed of what is going on. I would also say, on some level, listening. The community has there's a lot of opinions. We've heard it on the board calls. And I do think the current superintendent did listen to some of the community's concerns and implemented changes based on that. So communication and collaboration with the administration is key.
Great, thank you. Okay, Aruni Don.
Sure. So the board's role is, as a governing body, is to set the policies that's appropriate during this COVID pandemic, and also to ensure and provide oversight of the administration. So with my background in microbiology, viral and bacterial infections, was an expert, I would like to say that. So therefore, I felt that during the discussions on the reopening plan, I was very thoughtful in the way that I asked the questions so that we could really understand what the potential gaps are in the reopening plan and address and find solutions. So I did feel that I was actively engaged and communicated with the administration to ensure that we had the best reopening plan in place so that the students and staff are safe, because that is our #1 priority in keeping the health and safety of our students and staff. As far as the after current programming, I think it's a continuing discussion on what's working and what's not working, and what hasn't been working. We are continuing to work with the administration to make sure that they have the resources to support and get things back in order.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. And this question starts with Patricia Lewis, and this is the question. Do you have any personal conflicts of interest, including relatives that work for or provide services to the school district, or any financial interest that would cause you to need to recuse yourself from involvement with Board of Ed actions? So we start that answer with Patricia Lewis.
So based on the presentation given last night, I guess it was 2 nights ago, I apologize. As a teacher, there are certain obligations and requirements that I have to follow as far as negotiations of contract. So I may not be involved with the negotiation as a teacher in a different school district, but I can have the final vote once the pay scales have been determined. So as far as financial, I don't have any financial interest. And if there was ever a situation where a decision that I wasn't expecting, I had a personal conflict, then I would recuse myself. I don't foresee anything other than I'm a teacher in a district in Morris County, and I have to follow all the guidelines established by the New Jersey School Boards Association.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have, okay, question for Jennifer Parker.
Okay, great.
Question. Do you have any personal conflicts of interest, including relatives that work for or provide services to the school district, or financial interest that would cause you to need to recuse yourself from involvement with Board of Ed actions?
So my simple answer, and I could leave it with absolutely no, I will say that it obviously depends, especially from the financial standpoint, on a day-to-day. It's depending on what comes down the pipeline, and you have to assess it as and when. But from a relative standpoint, I do not have, that I am aware of, a single relative living in the New Jersey area. So I think I'm good on that. So that would be a general no.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, Aruni Don.
No, I do not, and I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin Driscoll.
Yeah, to my knowledge, no, but since that was a short answer, I'm going to touch back on what we just discussed on COVID-19. And I just want to make a comment now, not as a candidate, but a community member. When I was listening to the Board of Ed meeting and watching it, I was a little concerned that there seemed to be some impatience with people calling in and asking questions about their kids going back to school. And there were some comments made that the information's been shared. I know it was several weeks ago, but in the end, I would just urge our administration and the board to be very sensitive here. If people are calling in and asking about washing, decontamination, and those things, you need to answer, 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 answer. It's not good enough to say we've already covered that. You just need to answer it. These are unprecedented times. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question is going to start with Jennifer Parker. Okay, recent protests against racial prejudice and injustice have raised awareness in many citizens. What role, if any, should the Board of Ed play in educating the school community on issues of bias involving race or gender? So we start with that with Jennifer Parker.
Okay, so yes, obviously a hot topic at the moment. And I do, so the ethics, the ethics lady specifically said, and I can almost quote her, "It is not the job of the board to run the schools, but to make sure the schools are run well." So with that, I would say that it is imperative that our administration implements a program in which the students are educated on bias and what have you. More importantly, it also goes to their just day-to-day behavior. And I think we have so much against bullying and what have you, but they need to incorporate diversity in it as well. It was asked on a board meeting, and the current administration said that they're dealing with a lot at the moment, and I don't disagree with that, but it does need to come. It needs to be part of the curriculum. And I do think that creating these committees, then you can focus on this type of issue that they're not focusing on right now because they're trying to do something else.
Okay. Okay, next person to answer, Aruni Don.
Sure. So as far as racial equity, this was the topic that we did discuss in one of our curriculum committees. And one thing that I would highlight is that there is, within the high school, there's content, as far as, African American literature, history, the Holocaust, genocide, electives, anti-Semitic education, inclusivity around LGBTQ, etc. So the diversity literature is already infused into a lot of the curriculum in the high school. One of the things as far as board's role is to ensure, as we discuss the curriculum, if there needs to be any accommodations or new additions, that has to be incorporated into the curriculum. But I think beyond that, there has to be this organic exposure of students to what it means to be, racially diverse. And that has to start not just at the high school level. And I think it has to start at the elementary level, educating young kids. And as a whole community, we need to continue to discuss this. The board can discuss the content of the curriculum with the administration and let them lead as far as what they need to put in the courses.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kevin Driscoll.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, recent protests against racial prejudice and injustice have raised awareness in many citizens. What role, if any, should the Board of Ed play in educating the school community on issues of bias involving race or gender?
Yeah, thank you very much. First, let me say, I worked 30 years at Procter & Gamble, and P&G is probably one of the icons and corporate leaders in diversity and inclusion. And I personally spent many days and hours developing and leading that kind of training at Procter & Gamble. So I have a lot of experience in this area. And the board needs to really set an example, make sure our policies and procedures ensure that there is no tolerance for prejudice and that kind of behavior in our schools. I think there's two elements here. There's another element that goes beyond diversity and inclusion, but it's also important that we address. And this has to do with equity in education. And when we talk about equity in education, that's different than diversity and inclusion. Okay? Equity in education means that every student has different needs. And the programs at our school need to recognize that. And in my mind, I believe that the district, our school district, has a responsibility to put systems in place to ensure every child has an equal chance for success. And that's beyond ethnicity as far as race, color, or creed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And last person to answer that question is Patricia Lewis.
Thank you. This is an extremely important topic, not just because it's lately become an issue with, this should always have been an important topic, because the job of a school is to prepare our children to be productive members of society. And in order to be productive members of society, you have to be able to be inclusive of everyone, regardless of race, sex, gender. And so it's very important as far as how to do that. As a board, you have an oversight role and policy making. So how that is implemented is up to the superintendent, but we would ensure that the curriculum stands by and has things incorporated throughout. Exactly what courses and how it is done, that is up to the staff and the administration. And as you know, Mr. Driscoll, as Kevin was talking about equity, every day I work with students that struggle, and I see there's so many different types of learners. Some are visual, you know, some have to have manipulatives to understand. They have to physically touch things. We need to make sure that there are programs for every type of learner, and we don't lose sight of and just look at one type of group. It's every student has to have what is needed to have the optimal education.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. This question starts with Aruni Don. And the question is this: how will you increase transparency and timely responsiveness of the Board of Ed in communications with residents? How will you increase transparency and timely responsiveness of the Board of Ed in communications with residents? So that answer starts with Aruni Don.
Thank you. And that's an excellent question, because in fact, when we did talk about having committees, board of committees, one of the things that I brought up is a potential communication committee. This has been a topic that I have brought up a number of times over the last last year since I've joined the board, is that communication piece, which is critical. And I think it has to come from all fronts, from the leadership on the board, as well as the leadership on the administration, the efficient and effective communication with the community, and also listening to the community to make sure that we hear all voices, the entire voices, students, staff, and community members. So transparency is something that I strongly believe in, and I think that we do need to move forward to work on that.
Okay. All right. Kevin Driscoll, just for clarification, the question asked about both increased transparency and timely responsiveness of communications, just to be clear. Kevin?
Okay, so thank you very much. And I can understand why the community is asking this question. If you look at just over the last year, but it goes back really even longer than that, you can see the frustration or hear the frustration on the part of the community that they don't feel listened to and they don't feel like they're getting the information they need. And I think if you look at our Move Forward platform, what Patricia, Jen, and I have said is that first, we believe that open, transparent communication between the school board, the school administration, and the community are essential to a well-run school district. We've laid out a number of things that we believe needs to happen. One, the board needs to ensure that all information that's shared and presented at board meetings is posted in a timely manner. That is not happening. You can't find some of the PowerPoints and other presentations from this past spring. They're not on the website. Okay, the board needs to encourage and support involvement from the community. Now, at the last board meeting, they talked about you can't have community members on committees. Actually, you can have them on ad hoc committees. So instead of falling over themselves saying why you can't have community members, I would have liked to see the board reaching out and saying how we can. Okay, the other thing is that we've talked about is exploring the development of a database which summarizes the community questions and concerns with Board of Ed and administrative responses. That way people can go there and know they've been heard and they've got answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patricia Lewis.
Thank you for this question from the community. I can understand the frustration the community has felt because I felt it personally. If you send a letter, and I know people have sent a letter and there's been a response 5 months later with questions asked. So if you send a letter, it needs to be recognized and you need to have an answer. That's why we want to explore the development of database, because people are asking questions, not receiving answers. And to save time and efficiency, have the answers posted. Because if one person's asking and taking the time to write it, probably 10 others are thinking it, if not more. So there has to be acknowledgement, not only of letters, but also in public comment. In the past year, public comment has been limited from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. It also has many times turned into a thank you next without any acknowledgement and attempt to answer. The communities, if they're asking the questions and meetings are going till 3 a.m., that is a sign there has not been effective communication. So we need to ensure that people are heard, people feel they can get involved. We should not hear the words frustrated, I've given up, I don't want to do this anymore. And when we're making decisions, we have to evaluate every policy by listening to the various stakeholder groups, because collaboration allows for the best decision making. Having only a small group involved is never going to be the best answer for this community. The more stakeholders involved, the better our decision making will be.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next question. All righty.
Say one thing.
Do we hear? We haven't heard from Jen.
Jennifer
Oh,
has an answer.
I'm sorry. I wrote down, I crossed your name like,
Been crossed
go ahead.
off.
Go Jen. Go Jen. Sorry.
So I only want to jump in because this is actually goes to one of the reasons that I got involved, and it comes down to process. I think you just need to look at the past year. I suppose this is a question out to the incumbents. Do you think there's been transparency on the board? I mean, the question's being asked, so there's just not. And it leads to a lack of trust. The timeliness, there are policies and procedures in place and they need to be followed. And part of that is when there are questions asked at the board meeting, they need to simply be answered. And whether the answer is, I am looking into this and I will get back to you, and I can't get back to you within 24 or 48 hours, but they can get back to you a week later because it requires research, fine. But there needs to be communication of this. It's really simple. I understand, you believe that there's should be communication committee, great, but there just simply needs to be communication. I'm sorry, I feel the frustration of the community right now, and I might be expressing that a bit, but I think the policies, the procedures need to be in place and followed, and it's quite simply done.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, well, writing on that. Hold on here. Okay, some residents believe, I'm sorry. So this is going to start with Kevin. Okay, Kevin Driscoll. Okay, some residents believe that board members should treat each other with more civility. Do you have any opinions or suggestions to address this perception? Okay.
So, well, thank you for the question. The first thing I like to say on this is that when you're talking about a board or any team, having a diversity of points of view or opinions makes for a very strong board. It makes for a very strong team. So I totally support people coming on the board and not agreeing with each other. Okay? The problem is that when there is mean-spiritedness, a lack of collaboration, it poisons the benefits of that kind of diverse points of view. It is equally bad when you have board members that sit by and watch it and say nothing. So one, the good news is this is a solvable problem. Okay, there are boards forming all the time. There are teams forming all the time. There are companies, okay, that are getting acquired, that are merging. I have overseen, okay, acquisitions. I have overseen joint ventures, and there are solutions to get teams that aren't functioning effectively to work together and work effectively. And it's being done every day. This board, our board, needs to put the time in to find solutions to the rancor and the discord that we see at board meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patricia Lewis.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Some residents believe that board members should treat each other with more civility. Do you have any opinions or suggestions to address this perception?
Okay. The first answer is absolutely. I mean, we teach our children to treat each other with respect. And every day in the classroom, we are giving our students lessons on how to treat each other respectfully, and also how to answer questions with different opinions, and to politely, if someone has like a different answer, discuss that. As a board of ed, you represent the community. You are adults. You're also an example and a role model to our children in the community. And you should be able to show how to have a difference of opinion and do it respectfully. And there has been many examples where the board members have not treated each other respectfully. And there's been a break of the trust, not only within the board, but within the community. So in order to, I think there was a discussion before of change of culture. There has to be an understanding, not only with the board, but with the community. It is a good thing to raise a various viewpoint. And Kevin was just talking about this. The best decisions come from understanding various viewpoints. I myself, I love to do research and hear from various stakeholders because my viewpoint is based on my experience and my knowledge base. But I want to hear from Kevin. I want to hear from Jennifer because Kevin has his 30 years of experience in running boards. Jennifer has been in running boards and has an understanding of process. That makes it a richer discussion. And instead of being upset when people don't agree, you learn to listen to each other.
Thank you. Okay, Jennifer Parker.
So I completely agree with Kevin and Patricia on this one. I'm laughing a little bit because they are so amusing at times. That what would we do if they were civil? It would be boring and no one would watch, right? But it's at times appalling. It's at times embarrassing to watch. So I would just say that without question, there needs to be more civility. But I do agree wholeheartedly with what Kevin said about that doesn't mean that they need to agree. And for a matter of fact, at one point, and this was not this past year, it was actually previously, possibly before Dr. Don was on the board, I went to a meeting where they were accused of all saying yes to everything. And that is not what a board is either. It is a discussion. It is a collaborative process. It is an informational process. I'm laughing also a little bit because Kevin, Patricia, and I came together to run, and we have had many discussions over one word, whether we like it or not, and points around it and everything. And it is really interesting where we start and where we end up with something. And even I am sometimes impressed with our collaborative process that has gone on, because we truly end up with something that we all agree on, but it takes a while to get there. It doesn't just happen. And things change along the way to get to that agreement. So I just think it is imperative that there is a collaborative process and one that is civil.
Great, thank you. Okay, Aruni Don.
Thank you. So this is, I just wanted to say that I believe in collaborative process. In fact, this is what I do day in, day out in my workplace, working with cross-functional teams across the global, different geographies, et cetera, with people with different mindsets. And then I do feel on the board, I've also been, respectful in the way that I approach questions. And yes, I do think that people can have differences in opinion, and there has to be a dialogue, and that's critical. But we are role models, and we are in a leadership role, and we need to demonstrate that to our children. And I think that's exactly how I've displayed myself on the board this past year. And the reason that I chose to run independently is that main reason, that I did not want to communicate the message that I was taking one side or another or aligned to a certain political group, but it is because I want to be an independent thinker, yet have the ability to collaborate with our entire team, the entire board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. This starts with Patricia Lewis. And the question is, the community is very concerned with the high school's ranking. What programs or initiatives would you like to see to improve the high school's ranking?
Thank you for the question. Rankings are important for the town because it has to do with probably your biggest asset, your house, your property value. So all of us, whether you have a child in the system or not, have an interest in it. And looking at the high school, one thing you don't want to have is change in administration over and over again. That instability causes problems within having a consistent message and building a plan, because every time someone comes in, they start from scratch. So we need to have consistency of leadership, and the board needs to support the leadership. And if there's any weaknesses, that they need to be identified to make sure all the resources are there to establish the best educational program possible. As far as rankings, I do know that you need to look into, are we offering the right number of AP courses? How is the testing going? What are the needs of the students, and are they being met? And what can we do to better assist the students in regards to areas that the rankings have an impact? The rankings do change every year as to what the important categories are. So you need to have an understanding of what is the current trend, where is it going, and what should we do to ensure that Mountain Lakes always maintains the best educational program possible for our students.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer Parker.
Great, thank you. Actually, go ahead and repeat the question one more time. And
Yep, the community is very concerned with high school's ranking. What programs or initiatives would you like to see to improve the high school's ranking?
Okay, so I'm going to completely agree with Tricia, part of it, on everything she said, but particularly the part about the new administration, that we can't continue to have changing administration and staff and what has gone on. I mean, we finally have a principal at the high school, and thank goodness, so our kids can finally go back to school, because I've got a high schooler sitting here who it's not emotionally a good thing for them to be sitting at home. They need the opportunity to go back. But moreover, we hired an assistant superintendent to actually, and as I understand it, look at our curriculum and revise our curriculum. And I do think it is imperative that this is done in line with looking at the high school rankings. And then with that, it is the obligation really of the board to oversee and support and empower, again, that word, empower the assistant superintendent and the superintendent to do just that, to put in place these programs that need to be put in place in respect of high school ranking.
Okay, thank you. And Aruni Don?
Sure. I think rankings are important. This is an important topic that has been brought up, for many years, and it continues to be an important to our residents that our schools are ranked high. And as far as what New Jersey Monthly ranks, and there's niche rankings, there are differences in the way, the methodology that's used for different ranking platforms. And I think those are things that we need to look at, as far as the school curriculum and the standards. This year, over the summer, the assistant superintendent, as well as the administration and the staff, worked on 45 plus curriculum to make sure that our, standards are up to date and met. Those processes will be implemented, or some have already been implemented. That is going to help to continue to build on our strengths that exist. I mean, we are in New Jersey, one of the best states as far as public education is concerned, and Mountain Lakes is one of the top. So we want to build on that and continue to bring up the rankings with the focus on standards in the curriculum, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Okay, and Kevin Driscoll?
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree that rankings are important. It influences how people come and look at the Mountain Lakes community. I think it's one of the things that my wife and I looked at when we came to Mountain Lakes. It also, people feel it influences property values. So they are important. It also is a measure in some ways of how the schools are doing, but it's not the only measure. And also it's a flawed measure. If you look at New Jersey Monthly and their criteria, the weightings change periodically. Also, there's measures in there that really are problematic for our community. One of the things they look at is four-year graduation rates. Well, in our measures, it includes Lake Drive schools. Those students' IEPs may not have a four-year graduation plan. So it's flawed in that way. And I think the best thing to do is really to focus on, as Patricia said, giving our students the best education. Make sure we have a strong AP program. We have a strong curriculum program. We have a strong prep program for SAT tests. But even more than that, that we have equity in education. Okay, I mean, I think, as I mentioned before, we need our curriculum, our teachers, our administration needs to appreciate that every student has different challenges and needs, and that we find a way to bring every student along. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, that concludes our questions for this evening. And now you have an opportunity to offer a closing statement, again, with the 2-minute time. We're going to start in the reverse order that we started with the introduction.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did it again. I keep writing. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
You're starting with me, correct? Is that what you said, the first order? Okay. All right. Said, oh no. Okay, so as I mentioned in my introduction, and it was also touched on in the questions, professionalism and process have become very frustrated, leading to a lack of proper oversight with the board. Because of this, we have a budget deficit from the previous school year, and we may be heading for another one this year. Because of this, the communication within the community is inadequate, and trust in our school board is impaired. By implementing the changes that we discussed here today, such as standing committee for critical areas of concern, supporting, encouraging, and responding to community involvement, and instituting a board process that is consistent with board policies and procedures, the school board will be able to make informed, collaborative decisions that are in the best interest of the Mountain Lakes School District. We can't afford these mistakes that were made last year. We simply can't, not literally or figuratively. We lost valuable staff because of them. This directly affected not only the people who lost their jobs, but also the students. Patricia, Kevin, and myself, we bring 60 years of educational, financial, and legal experience that will help Mountain Lakes to move forward. We are ready to support and empower our new administration, as well as the teachers and the staff, to enable them to do their best work for our schools. We need your support. We need your vote, and to enable us to implement these changes.
Thank you. Okay, Patricia Lewis.
First, I want to again thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum. And I'd like to thank the people in the community for listening to our platform and our viewpoints this evening. As you decide who to vote for, and please, you need to vote. It's a responsibility every citizen should take seriously. But I want you to think for the Board of Education, what experience and skill sets do you want to have on the board? What experience and skill sets are not currently in the board that need to be filled? Looking at the budget fiasco is the only way I can put it. We need more board members that have an understanding of finance. Kevin has worked on boards for 30 years and worked at Procter & Gamble. I worked at Kraft Foods, which is his competitor, looking at it. Jennifer has worked in the finance industry as a lawyer. She understands processes. We bring all this experience and understanding of what the community needs and what is lacking on the board. In order to have the most effective board, you need to have people with different skill sets and experience. Everyone that's running is a nice person. Everyone that's running wants to do what's best for the students. In order to do what's best for every student, we need to have different skill sets. And as Jennifer said, we were bringing 60 years of experience in education, legal, board management, executive, business background, and we know and understand the budget process, how to plan, do the processes, and every day I look and have a reminder of how many different types of learners there are, and that we need to have programs established so every child in Mountain Lakes receives the best education they can. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Kevin Driscoll.
Thank you very much. So again, let me start by saying thanks to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. Susan, let me say thanks to you for moderating it. Also, I appreciate Dr. Don for being here, but I want to give a special thanks to my two colleagues, Patricia Lewis and Jennifer Parker. It truly has been and continues to be a pleasure to be campaigning with them as we push forward on our Move Forward platform, which we believe addresses some key challenges faced by our school district. In the end, we are facing a crucial election in our district this year. This past year, as Patricia mentioned, we saw some major problems with the board's oversight of the school district. We had a budget crisis, a tax increase that was the largest in many, many years. We saw the loss of key personnel. We saw a lack of follow-up on critical matters, and the list can go on. We heard some of the things tonight about the rank around the board. We have these problems to a large extent, we believe, because we don't have the needed skills and experience in many of our board members. Jen, Patricia, and I have that experience. As they mentioned, we bring over 60 years of relevant business and financial experience. We're running a campaign of substance. We've shared specific proposals and ideas to address the challenges with budget oversight, the need to improve the board's engagement with the community, and using good business practices to ensure our children get the best possible education while being sensitive to the community's tax burden. There's a clear choice this year for the school board. Move more of what you saw in this past year. I don't think we want that. Or bringing myself, Patricia, and Jen. As we've talked about, we have the knowledge and experience to make a difference. Thank you, and we need your vote.
Okay, thank you. And Aruni.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I want to end by saying that we are a highly educated community, and our schools are among the top in New Jersey for offering a well-rounded educational experience. Mountain Lake School District is known for having great educators, and our students earn admission to some of the top schools. I want to, instead of focusing on the negative, I want to start there and build on the positive and continue to strengthen what we already have. I do think that I have the expertise, and having already served on the board for almost a year, that come January, I will be already up to speed on what the expectations are, the rules and regulations, what a board member can and cannot do, etc. So I have that advantage leading into January. I also would like to say that it is my strategic mindset, the planning that I do in my professional world that I bring to the table. And as far as, experience in finance, although I am not a CPA, having gone through pre-med and advanced mathematics, as well as currently looking at multi-billion-dollar revenue projections for pharmaceutical world, the things that I look at on a day-to-day basis, as far as data analytics and modeling, it's very complex compared to the budget. So I think the challenge is not the lack of expertise, but the ability to engage the entire board in those discussions on the finance and the budget discussions. And that will improve with strong leadership this coming January.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. You guys did a great job. And that is the end. Make sure to vote, because that's what this is all about. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vote.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you to everyone who listened, and please vote.